UFC Vegas 105, Josh Emmett versus Lerone Murphy takes place this weekend, and I will be giving my full card breakdowns and predictions from each fight, starting with the early prelims all the way up to the main event. Before I do that, though, I just want to kind of go through a bet that I hit last week for UFC Mexico. We were on fire for our picks, and it showed with this $1 to 1,000 parlay that I hit. So to start it off with, Markel Maderos by decision, Jamal Emmers by KO, Rafa Garcia by decision. Christian Rodriguez, Melt Costa to go to the distance, Atiba Gautier by KO, Kevin Borjas money line, David Martinez by KO, um, Edgar Chairez by KO or submission, Drew Dober, Manuel Torres to finish in a KO, and finally Brandon Moreno by decision. Pretty awesome stuff there. 11 leg, pretty much the full card. The Joe Pyfer fight I had in there, but it voided obviously. Sucks. I really wanted to see that fight, but I can't complain with that. It was $1 to 922, so I'll pull it up on the screen. But anyways, to get into this week's card, we start off on the early prelims in the women's strawweight division between Vanessa Low Monster Demopoulos taking on Talita, the problem child Alencar. Um, Vanessa's 11-6 here versus Talita Alencar's 5-1-1. Pull it up here. Vanessa's 5-3 in the UFC. She's okay. She's 3-2 in her last five, losing her last fight to Jacqueline Amarim by a round one armbar. A little bit of weird stuff going on in there. I remember Amarim was grabbing inside of her glove, and it was like against the cage, and like ultimately Vanessa started screaming like she's grabbing my glove, and she ends up getting finished with the armbar. Just weird. I think that she would have got finished anyways. Emery's very, very solid on the ground as we've seen in her career so far. Um, can't really take too much away from that. Vanessa has a brawling striking style when she's on the feet. She is a jiu-jitsu player, however. She has solid takedowns, solid jiu-jitsu. She has, I believe, two submissions in the UFC. She also has some questionable decision wins. You see that she's 5-3 in the UFC. However, realistically, she should be about 3-8 or 3-5. Eight fights overall in the promotion. Um, this fight's just kind of going to be all over the place. Talita Alencar has not been impressive since joining the promotion. She fought in the Dana White Contender Series against Stefiano Luciano, where it went to a draw. She was spamming takedowns, and she ended up getting a few in that fight. But overall, she started gassing out. Then Luciano starts landing the volume as Alencar can't get to the ground. Um, in Alencar's debut, she won a decision over Rayani dos Santos. It was a split, and just another really close fight where she's just kind of barely doing enough. I mean, she didn't even do enough in the Contender Series fight, but then we saw her in her second UFC fight rematch Stefiano Luciano, where she lost by a comfortable decision. She went 1 for 10 on those takedowns, and just looked like a fish out of water. She got 30-27. Um, and she's one of those fighters where if she can't get the takedown, she is screwed. She's going to gas out. The striking's not there. And I mean, even with this one, the experience isn't there. She's 5-1-1. She's 5-1. Um, the smaller girl here, which is actually rare for Vanessa Demopoulos being 5'2". Um, but just like even with a 58-inch reach and Vanessa Demopoulos coming off a submission loss herself, I just see her bouncing back here and stuffing the takedowns, maybe landing a couple of her own. And I can actually see Vanessa finishing her in the third round on the feet. However, I am going to pick Vanessa Demopoulos to win a 29-28 decision. I think she'll probably drop the first round. Alan Carter, like everyone's got cardio in the first round, right? So I think that she will land a few takedowns in the first round, have some decent control time, but gas out quick. And Demopoulos will put it on in the second and the third, especially. So give me Demopoulos by 29-28 unanimous decision. Moving up the card here, we have Victor Henry taking on Pedro Falcao. Victor Henry 37 in this matchup compared to Pedro's 32. However, the experience is most definitely on Victor Henry, being 24-7-1 no contest, 3-2-1 in the UFC, however. Um, this is a weird fight. It's hard to call. Henry's coming off a round two guillotine loss to Charles Jourdain. But Jourdain actually has a really nice guillotine. He's won his last 3 out of 4 fights by guillotine, and the only one that he didn't win by finish was Chrome Gracie, where if you submit Chrome Gracie, like Hats off to you, mate. But he won a comfortable decision in that fight. It was fucking terrible. Fuck Con Gracie. Um, Before then, he back to Victor Henry, obviously. Um, he butchered up Ronnie Yaya, who's pretty dog shit. If the fight doesn't go to the ground, Ronnie Yaya is pretty much just a sitting duck, and that's how Victor Henry was treating. He's been a win one, lose one type of guy his whole career. His most impressive win being in his UFC debut. It was a war over Raoni Bocelos. Henry has a 84% takedown defense, traditionally very good at stuffing the takedowns, but I think it is age and recent fights that Falcao can exploit that. You know how it's only gonna get harder as the age comes, and you're fighting a hungry guy like Falcao. So we'll get into talking about him here. Um, Both guys 5'7" to 5'6", so very close in the height. Falcao's 16-4. He's 0-1 in the promotion. His only fight was a unanimous decision loss to Victor Hugo. However, the fight was on like 4 days' notice. You're coming in there, you're fighting Victor Striker Hugo on 4 days' notice. It's pretty tough, man. Um, he's a well-rounded guy, evenly splitting his wins by method, pretty close for the most part. I don't think he'll KO Henry, however. Like obviously, I think this is either a decision or submission for Falcao. Henry coming off a sub loss, Falcao coming off a decision loss to Hugo. Um, Pedro in that fight, however, had 7 minutes of control time off of one takedown. Obviously, a lot of it was probably with clinch time and stuff like that, but still, there is definitely a presence on the ground, and I think he will land a few in this fight. Um, Falcao on his Dana White Contender Series fight, however, fought James Barnes, if you know him. I believe he was a Bellator fighter way back in the day. He was 41 years old fighting Falcao in that fight. Falcao ate him up early. But just very interesting that you put a 41-year-old guy on the Dana White Contender Series. Um, Overall here, though, I think I'm gonna have to side with Pedro Falcao. He's unproven, but he's on now a full camp, and he looked okay against Victor Hugo compared to someone like Victor Henry, who's just he's a win one lose one type of guy, and just hasn't been showing me the most impressive performances recently. Obviously, he looked good against Yaya, but like who doesn't? Fight before that, he was losing to Bashrat, the bad one. Getting subbed by Jourdain down a weight class. I got to take Pedro Falcao to lock up a submission in his own hands. Give me Pedro Falcao to win by submission. On to our next one. Moving up the card, we have Loma Lukbumi taking on Estela Nunez. Why is this fight happening? I don't know. Estela Nunez is 0-4 in the promotion. Lukbumi's on a three-fight winning streak and 6-2 in the promotion. Her only loss is coming by decision against Lupi Godinez and Angela Hill. Estela Nunez is very good in the first round. A lot of people will say that. She actually has a good right hand. She actually has power, and the her downfall is just her takedown defense, and her cardio is dog shit. Um, every single time, late second round, start of the third round, she's fading and she's getting finished in three of her four fights. Her last fight was a TKO loss to Victoria Dudakova, where Dudakova shot for a takedown, and Estela Nunez posted with her arm, and like her elbow or arm or something just fully fucking broke. That was 2 years ago. Um, I just don't think that this is a winnable fight for Estela Nunez. You're not going to knock out Loma, the Thai fighter, Luke Bumi, who has some of the most slick striking in the women's division, in my opinion. Very well rounded as well. She almost lands two takedowns in her own right, has a 72% takedown defense. Obviously, I went over her losses. And she's coming off a 29-28 decision win over Bruna Brazil and coming in here with a three-fight win streak. Um, I actually have a very interesting prop for this one. However, I think that Luma Lukbumi is going to lock up a submission in the third round. The second or third, I think we're going to see Nunez gas. I think it'll be a decent first round. Estella might land a couple good shots. I think that Lukbumi's going to land a couple takedowns. And just as this fight progresses, Estella's going to fade. Lukbumi only gets better. And I see her taking her to the ground and finding herself a rear naked choke. I'll go third round rear naked choke for Lukbumi. Moving up the card in our welterweight division, we have Reese the Irish Zombie McKee taking on Daniel Frunza. Um, Irish Zombie's not actually his nickname. That was given to him by Michael Bisping during the Ange Lusa fight. I was watching a bunch of these guys' fights earlier today because I'm really having a tough time picking a winner. Um, Reese McKee, 0-4 in the promotion. We have back-to-back fights of people that are 0-4 in the promotion, taking on Daniel Frunza, who's making his UFC debut. 6'2" versus 6'1". However, there is a big reach advantage for Reese McKee. He has a 5-inch reach advantage, and obviously the UFC experience. Um, you see 0-4. Now, let me go through Reese McKee's opponents. So he's only 29 as well. He's been cut from the UFC when he went 0-2, won three more fights in Cage Warriors, destroyed everyone that he was fighting in there, and then um, got re-signed to the UFC and is now 0-2 in his recent stint. Obviously has one more shot here, I believe. If he loses, then he'll get cut, obviously. His losses, though, UFC debut, he fights Hamzat Chimaev. He gets TKO'd on the ground in the first round. Who would have? Next fight, he loses a war decision with Alex Morono in 2020. So 5 years ago, it's pretty decent Morono at that time. Gets cut. Most recent fights are he's in a bang with Angelusa. So that's the fight that I was really watching because I know how solid Angelusa actually is compared to what his record shows. Um, and so first round comes out. Reese is landing some good jabs, sticks to his outside, and he gets hit with a couple bombs. That the one thing about Reese is that he wears damage pretty bad. His eyes swell up, his face gets all blemished. Um, and Ange Lusa lands a flurry on him. It was like a big right hand, and then he just starts going absolute fucking crazy on him. Second round was a dominant one for Lusa, kind of controlling him on the ground a lot more, looking for the takedown. But in the third round, I couldn't even tell what Reese landed that hurt Lusa. He landed some really good elbows in like a clinch. And it actually, like, if the fight went another minute, I think Reese McKee would have finished it by knockout the way that he had Lusa. It was a 29-28 decision, and like that's a decent loss for your third one. And then in his last fight, loses a split decision to Chidi and Njokuani. Like, we just saw that guy destroy Zaleski Azizu dos Santos by knockout. Reese is going to split decision with him. I will say it. No, no way it should have been a split decision. But still, close fight either way. To go on Daniel Frunza, however, what came through the Dana White Contender Series fight. He fought Nazem Kutsi, who was 17-1 at the time. Um, had a lot of hype to him. The guy was terrible. You go back and watch that fight. Kutsi's throwing these clubbing ass hooks, like zero technique. He threw an uppercut from his hip and it lands on Frunza and dropped him in the first round, almost finished him as well. And then he just kind of laid on him because he gassed. And so the second round comes in and Kutsi literally looks like the most dead fighter I've ever seen. And Frunza just lands a big body knee that puts him down and that was that. Big underdog Cassius from Romania. Um, Frunza's solid. He starts off the first round. He throws a lot of leg kicks, a lot of body kicks, and a lot of head kicks, and he mixes them up really well, and they're actually pretty fucking fast. One thing I will say is his striking defense is terrible. Same with Reese McKee, however. Both of these guys get hit a shit ton. Not a whole lot of defense going on, a lot of walking forward. However, in this fight, I do think that Frunza will be the aggressor, as obviously McKee's going to be fighting off of that jab and working his way around the cage and teeping and throwing a Reese has a great head kick on him as well. Um, this is a really hard fight to call. I don't really think we'll see a whole lot of takedowns. I've saw Frunza get submitted when he was 3-1, so like I don't really know if that matters at all. Um, Reese McKee by decision, I believe, is what I'm going to go with. I think he's going to use the cage and a lot and clinch knees a lot. I did see Daniel Frunze get controlled against the cage a few times against Kutsi, and he didn't look like he really knew how to get out of that situation. Kutsi just lacked fight IQ. So overall, I think I'm going to take Reese McKee to actually get his first UFC victory. Um, I'm going to take Reese McKee by 29-28 decision. He'll probably drop that first round and probably get dropped in the first round, but I think he's going to rally back, maybe even drop Frunza late in the rounds because McKee has great cardio and Frunza was fading a little bit too. I was talking how much about Coetzee was, but Frunza actually was gassing a little bit too and looking a lot slower. So yeah, give me McKee by decision. On to our next fight, we go to the women's strawweight division again. Let me just pull up my notes here, sorry. We have Dione Barbosa taking on Diana Belbita. Dione Barbosa, the Witch, is 7-3, 1-1 in the UFC. Her loss comes to in her last fight, Miranda Maverick by decision. Um, Good loss. We know how good Miranda Maverick is. Very solid, great wrestler, and just kind of did what Barbosa does, except a little bit better. Controlled her a lot that fight, and just kind of put Dione's submission threat to a zero while controlling her. It was a good win for Miranda. However, her UFC debut was a decision win over Ernesta Caracate, where she had 2 takedowns, 4 minutes of control time, and actually landed some really good shots. Her striking looked really solid in that fight, landed some good spinning elbows. And in her Dana White Contender Series fight, she won a very impressive round one armbar to get a contract. Her last loss was a unanimous decision. I just said that. Um, Dione is a solid striker and lands the takedowns at 1.73 per 15, and I think that's more than enough to run through someone like Diana Belbita. Belbita's 2-5 in the UFC, 15-9 overall. She's on a 2-fight skid. Doesn't really care about this result. She said this openly in the Fight Day interviews. She's opening her own gym and just kind of said, "Yeah, I'll fight. I don't really care like how it goes, but this attitude against a hungry chick like Barbosa it's just a recipe to get submitted, in my opinion. Um, Her last loss, she got submitted by Molly McCann, round one armbar. That sounds familiar, right? Before then, let Carolina Kowalewicz, that Polish chick, um, who's about 40 years old, land 150 significant strikes on her and smoked Belvita. Lost to Gloria DePaula, who was 6-6 as a pro. And yeah, just haven't seen anything from Belbita. I think that if you get subbed by Molly, the path to victory is very clear. I think the only Barbosa gets an early takedown, and I don't really see Belbita getting up. So I'm going to take Dione Barbosa by round one armbar. Yeah, not much to say there. On to our next fight, though, where I got a lot to say. In our bantamweight division, we have Davey the Dangerous Grant taking on Daniel Willie Cat Santos. Um, First thing I want to say is I'm going with the underdog, Davey fucking Grant. This guy, I'm a big fan of. He's 7-6 in the UFC, but if you look at the competition that the guy's fought, close decision with Chito Vera, close decision with Song Yadong, knocked out Jonathan Martinez, close fight with Adrian Yanez, should have complete robbery loss against Daniel Marcos. But in his last fight, we saw him absolutely destroy Ramon Tavares. He has those comeback inverse triangle over Rafael Assunção to send him into retirement. Amazing fights from Davy Grant. The one thing I will say is the guy's 39 now. And I still don't think he'll crack. That's another thing. His last fight being a decision win over Ramon Tavares, he landed 150 significant strikes. Um, this guy is fucking good. He has a 65% takedown defense and lands over 5 significant strikes per minute. Um, he's a very crafty vet. He's got 6 striking. One thing I will say about him though is he also wears damage pretty bad. He gets cut easily around the nose and stuff like that, on the forehead. But I just see him stuffing Daniel Santos's takedowns, the Chuta box man, and I kind of think these guys are a little bit overrated. I'm literally wearing a Charles Oliveira hoodie right now, so don't call me a casual or anything there. Big Charles fan, but I just kind of think his gym is getting a little bit weak. Elvis Brenner, I think Menifield's in there, like just some shitters in my opinion. So Charles will be in his corner. He hasn't fought, however, since 2023, where he beat Johnny Munoz by unanimous decision, who's no longer in the promotion. Before that, he had an amazing fight with John Castaneda, where he won by second round knee TKO. Both guys dropped each other, and just coming into this one at 30, I assume that he kind of took some time, got his shit together a little bit, just because like Johnny Munoz, the performance wasn't good, and just like take a little bit of time. You're 28 now, you're coming into your prime, so he is going to look better, I think. But I just don't see him being enough to take to beat the Davy Grant test. Daniel has a 33% takedown accuracy, and I just don't think that he's going to be enough dominant enough to beat Grant on the scorecards. So my official pick is going to be Davy Grant round three TKO or to win by unanimous decision. Big underdog pick there for Davy Grant. On to our next fight, our featured fight in the featured fight of the card. We go to the flyweight division between Ode Osborne taking on Louis Gurule. Another fighter that I was watching some tape on was Louis Gurule earlier. I watched his Dana White Contender Series fight versus Nick Piccinini, and wow, is all I got to say. I thought the first round was, I thought he was done in the first 30 seconds, Gurule. Piccinini's a three-time All-American wrestler. I know that because they wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. It's the only thing I heard. Three-time division wrestler versus D2 wrestler. The D2 wrestler handled fucking business. Piccinini came in, starting the fight, shot for a great double leg, slammed it to the ground, got on the back and locked in a rear naked choke within 20 seconds. I was like, holy fuck. Um, Gurule gets out of it and starts landing hands on him early. Um, Overall, Gurule got taken down 10 out of 20 times, but there was only about 2 or 3 minutes of control time because Gurule would just pop right back up to his feet, land big shots, and like the guy had over 100 significant strikes landed in that fight while getting taken down 10 times. It shows you something. He won the fight by split decision, Gurule. I thought that it should have probably been unanimous. He was landing the way bigger shots. He was the underdog and had Royval in his corner. He's a big training partner with Brandon Royval. I see them getting a lot of work together. Gurule's fucking good, man. He's 5'5" compared to Ode's 5'7", however. And Ode's coming into this one 4-6 overall in the promotion on a three-fight losing skid. Kind of fighting for his job. We love Ode Osborne, right? How can you not like this guy? On social media, he's got a great personality, chill guy, and he's actually a talented fighter. We've just kind of seen him. I mean, he got submitted by Asuma Mabayev. He got submitted by who am I blanking it on? Um, I'm genuinely blanking on who he got subbed by. Um, I know it won by was by Almabayev, and then in his last fight, he lost by, in my opinion, a robbery decision to Lazy Boy Rodriguez, who I think fucking sucks. Ode had him in a lot of trouble early in the first round, dropped him with a big shot. However, Ronaldo's control time was the deciding factor. I think that's going to be partially a path to victory for Gurule, kind of seeing how weak Ode Osborne has been off of his back in recent fights. Um, he is a D2 wrestler, like I said earlier, so he can be capable of doing that stuff. Ode, though, like I said, is fighting for his job, man. He has decent striking. He's got good takedowns and is a heavy presence on top. His path to victory, in my opinion, is taking down Gurule. He's got to take down Gurule because his chin, we've seen him crack. Um, he's cracked by Manel Cop him. I'm in a blank on the other one as well, too. But we've seen him go out twice. He's been submitted 3 times. Three-fight losing streak. He's 33 years old now compared to Gurule's 31. However, he does have a huge 9-inch reach advantage on Gurule here. So if he can keep him to his outside, keep him to the outside, land a stiff jab, mix in the takedowns, there is a path to victory there. However, I just think that it's going to be. I just think that Gurule can fight can make more mistakes and is just a more clean technical fighter. Give me Gurule to win by round three TKO. Yeah, main card opener. UFC debuts for Torres Finney, not a UFC debut for Valentin, but UFC debut for Torres Finney taking on Robert Valentin. This fight in the middleweight division, we have the 6'2" Robert Valentin versus the 5'8" Torres Finney. We all know Torres Finney for his build and the fact that he went 3-0 in the Contender Series. This guy got told after 2 wins to keep coming back, come back, come back because you're too boring. You gotta do something. That's what the boss was saying at least. Um, he comes in initially and wins by submission. Um, Comes in against Cam Rouston, City Kickboxing lad, and wins a boring-ish decision. I mean, Finney had 10 takedowns in that fight, and then in his last fight in the Contender Series, picks up a ground and pound victory. Robert Valentin came from The Ultimate Fighter. We saw him on this most recent season, and excuse me. He was looking really impressive. Won his first fight by submission and then his second fight by like 20-second knockout. Um, in the ultimate finale, he fought Ryan Loder. Valentin got to his back to Loder's back early and almost got him out of there with a rear naked choke, which would have been extremely impressive. I believe Ryan Loder is like one of American top team's wrestling coaches or like jujitsu coaches, and that would have been pretty impressive, right? However, Loder ends up just dominating him on the ground, um, completely just controlled him, gassed out Valentin, and ended up landing big elbows in the second round, putting out Valentin. Um, I kind of see this fight going a little bit that same way. I know that people are going to say, look, Ryan Loder's much more technically sound than Torres Finney on the ground, and Finney shouldn't even really be here, or whatever, or he's too boring. And this seems like a kind of Dana put this one together to try and get Valentin a win over Finney. I just don't see it. I think that Finney's going to use his takedowns like he always does. He's in the UFC now. He doesn't give a fuck if he's boring or not. He'll hold you on the ground for 10 minutes if he wants. And I just think that once he's on top, he's going to be way too much of a presence. However, um, if Finney starts gassing, which we've seen a little bit before, if he starts fading and he doesn't do enough like damage or control time to Valentin where he's not tired as well, I can see Valentin actually putting him out late in the fight. That definitely is a possibility. Actually, it'll be by KO because I don't think you're fucking finding a sub on Finney. Although Valentin is actually pretty solid on the ground, most of his wins come by submission. The guy's got vicious fucking stand up, pretty technical, throws the fridge at you in every single shot, has elbows, has knees. However, I am going to go with Torres, the Punisher Finney, to win this one by round three. You know what? I'm saying round three, finish too much. I'm going round two, ground and pound for Torres Finney. Same as Ryan Loder gets him out in the second round. Probably do it. Probably will kick out Valentin from the promotion. Give me Torres Finney to win by round two TKO. We move on to the middle. What's going on? Why do these guys say 200 pounds? We go to Brad Tavares versus Gerald Meerschaert in the middleweight division. I don't know if there's a catchweight bout here. I don't know why this is saying 200 pounds on UFC.com. Um, Anyways, both guys 37 in this fight. When I first saw that, I would not have really guessed that Tavares is 37. But then you look at it and the guy's had fucking 25 fights in the UFC. So I was like, fair enough. He's 15 and 10 in the UFC, 20 and 10 overall compared to GM3's 37 and 18 and 12 and 10 in the UFC. We'll start off with GM3 here. He has 11 sub wins and one KO win in the UFC. So 100% finish rate in the UFC and borderline 100% finish rate overall for his career. The guy's got like 29 submission wins out of 37 victories. Like, holy fuck. Um, Lots of comeback wins. Most of them, however, are over strikers that gas out against him. They throw they throw the kitchen sink at him in the first round. Probably hurt him a few times. It's not a GM3 fight if he's not wobbling a little bit. And then that second and third round, the guy lands a takedown, GM3, and he comes alive on the ground and finds a late submission. We saw with the Edmund Shabazian fight, that shit had me losing my mind. Um, Brad Tavares, however, is wait, actually no, we'll stay on GM3 here. GM3, I think has taken a lot more damage, however, over his career. The guy's been put out much more. However, Brad has been getting TKO'd a little bit. Gregor Rodriguez, Bruno Silva. Um, yeah, close decision with DDP a while back. Gerald has only a 35% takedown accuracy, however. So compared to Brad Tavares, who has a 80% takedown defense, traditionally very hard to get to the ground. Um, I kind of see this being a little bit hard for GM3 to find the submission, but you know how it goes. Um, Brad's now 1-4 in his last five. He lost to that was it, Jung Young Park in his last fight by split decision. Jung Young Park was able to get him down late in the third round and actually get to his back a little bit. But Park's a much better wrestler in terms of getting the fight to the ground and shooting for takedowns than GM3, in my opinion. I'm sure everyone would agree with that. Um, Brad's never been professionally submitted, however. In all those fights he's had, what is it, 30 professional fights, he's never been submitted. His knockout losses, RoboCop, like, come on. So like not like the chin's gonna be a factor here for Brad Tavares. I don't think that Gerald's gonna land a bomb. Um, I see Brad Tavares stuffing these takedowns here. I see them being pretty shitty attempts from Mershard as well. He's not a good wrestler at all. And I think he's actually going to really struggle in this fight. I think that we could see Brad Tavares again landing a early KO, I believe. Same thing to Hamza. Not comparing Hamza and fucking Brad Tavares, but just when Gerald's dry, the guy seems to crack a lot easier. And I think the Brad Tavares could find that shot very early. If not, he'll win a comfortable 30-27 decision. I am going to go with Brad to win by decision, however. Um, yeah, probably be it for Gerald Meerschaert, in my opinion. Don't really need to fight after that, I'd say. On to the heavyweight division, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu taking on Martin Buday. Kennedy 14-5, 8-5 in the UFC. He is a specimen, however, 6'5", 240 pounds, 83-inch reach, and this is now his third fight at heavyweight since moving up from light heavyweight. Um, since moving up, he's had back-to-back KO wins in the first round over Chris Barnett. Kind of it was an injury, but Kennedy would have smoked him, let's be real. And Lucas Brzeski, still not great fighters. However, Budai's fought both of those guys and won a split decision over Brzeski, where he was outstruck by 60. There was zero takedowns in that fight as well. And he won a mid decision over Chris Barnett. So this kind of just shows you a little bit of the levels here. Kennedy's a specimen here, and he will look to push the pace on Budai. Kennedy's really good at landing at the end of his punches. He's got that 83-inch reach, and he uses it very well. He's got a good push kick. He's got good knees, and he actually will, I think, will look for takedowns in this fight because Budai is just so horrible that I see him if this fight goes to the ground, I just don't think that Budai is going to be able to get back up. Um, Kennedy has a really impressive KO win over Carlos Ulberg. It ignited the whole win streak for Ulberg. His last loss, obviously, his only loss is to Kennedy Nzechukwu. So that's pretty cool. Um, I have an interesting take for this. I'll spit it out at the end here. I'll go through Martin Budai. Budai is 6'4", pretty tall in his own right. He's 14-2, impressive record, and 5-1 in the UFC. Very impressive. Now let's go over his resume. Um, of what you'd think would be a rising contender in the heavyweight division, right? So he beats Chris Barnett by decision, like I said. A split decision over Lucas Brzeski, where he's outstruck by 60. An extremely close fight with Jake Collier. The strikes was like 94-98. Submits Josh Parisian with a Kimura, but Parisian, let's be real, is the worst fighter in the roster. Has he ever won a fight? I genuinely don't know. And then in his next fight, gets dog walked and KO'd by Shamil Gaziev. The guy landed like 5 significant strikes. Um, and then wins in his last fight a split decision over ancient Andrei Arlovsky, where he got outstruck by 20. Like, are these even real stats? There is a world where Budai is like six. There's a world where he's 2-4 in the UFC, but he's 5-1 coming into this fight in the main card against Kennedy Nzechukwu. I originally had Kennedy to find himself a KO here, but the guy's a little bit weird. Um, and I think that he's going to do a little bit something different here. I think he's going to shoot for some takedowns, and I'm actually going to take Kennedy Nzechukwu to win this fight by submission. I can't put a round on it. If I had to, I'd say round two. But yeah, I see Kennedy can win this fight in every single way. I think he can put out Budai. I think that he can submit Budai, and I think that he can win a terrible decision. Um, but officially, I'm going to go with the least likely outcome, but a path to victory that I genuinely see, and Kennedy Nzechukwu to win by rear naked choke. Actually, I'll take by guillotine, but by submission for sure. We move on to the featured fight of the night. Cortavius, Are You Not Entertained? Romeus takes on Chang Ho Lee. First thing I want to say is Chang Ho Lee considers himself uh, let me make sure I got the country right, the Korean Khabib. He's been out wrestled in 2 or 3 of his road to UFC fights. I find that kind of funny. You're not the Korean Khabib, pal. Cortavius, Are You Not Entertained? Romeus. He is 9-3 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He's had 2 fights on the Contender Series. His first one, he got knocked out really bad by Ramon Tavares. His second one, he won a very impressive decision. He knocked the guy down. Lots of takedowns, lots of submission attempts. Don't know how he didn't finish the fight, but really good fight. Got him signed. And then in his UFC debut, I went back and watched it today. It was versus Gaston, the Dream Killer Bolanos, and he got 30-26. When they said that scorecard, however, I was very shocked. I thought that it was at least a 29-28, maybe. Um, Cortavius has a 70% takedown defense. He's a pretty good wrestler. He looks for the back take right away when he gets the takedowns. Decent striking, sometimes does some really stupid shit. He'll go for some flashy, like jumping kicks of some sort, and just it's just like, what the fuck are you doing, Cortavius? I understand it's in your nickname, but like, let's win the fight. He does struggle in the clinch a little bit. There was times where Gaston Bolanos, if you know him, is a primarily striking only type of guy, and Gaston would hold him against the cage, and it was just kind of like I was waiting for him to do something, Cortavius, and he just kind of didn't, and eventually Gaston would back up. And throughout that fight, Cortavius started to fade a little bit, and Gaston in his own right started landing takedowns, which I thought was a little bit shaky to see. He has solid control, however, but does fade in the fight, like I said. Chang Ho Lee, however, so I you might mention you're like, Lennon, why are you mentioning how he does in the clinch and shit like this? Chang Ho Lee is a fucking dog. This guy is a junkyard dog. He's a road to UFC guy, so you already just think, shit. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that too. But the thing is, man, the way that he fights is tricky for anyone. He will just run at you, look for gritty takedowns, or be in the clinch, and he lands he had like 80 body knees landed in that fight versus Xiao Long, on his UFC debut where he won by split decision. Um, just a fucking dog in there. The clinch knees, the clinch elbows, relentless pace. He never stops. Does look for a couple submission attempts. Um, the guy's actually pretty solid, and he has a chin on him. He was cut up and wore the damage well. Kept walking forward, like I said, and just ultimately, I thought won the fight. Outstruck Zhao Long by 20. The thing is, though, he kind of looks a little weird in the first. He looks kind of shit in the first round because it's just like the other guy's fresh as well. But the way that he fights just fades the other guy. Like it just makes it zaps his cardio. And I think it's going to be a huge factor here being a dominant man in the clinch compared to Romeus who struggles and also fades throughout fights, especially when getting kneed in the body. Um, Overall, I will see Chang probably finding himself a decision win. Chang, yeah, Chang Ho sorry. And he, like I said, he had in his three contender or road to UFC fights, he had a round one KO, a round three KO, and then dominant decision win. He averages 3.2 takedowns per 15. Um, and his opponent actually that he fought, actually, I won't even get into that. Overall, though, I can actually see a late knee finish from Chang Ho Lee. I could see him just finishing him with a great body knee. And Cortavius's corner is a little weird. Going into the third round of that Gaston fight, they told him, just have fun. Just have fun. In my opinion, that's just not the way to go about making your UFC debut when you're arguably down or down 2 rounds to 0. Just not a good look in my opinion. Overall, gave me Chang Ho Lee to win this fight by decision, though. Wouldn't be surprised with a late finish, however. Our co-main event here in the featherweight division, we have Pat Sabatini taking on Joe Anderson Brito. This is going to be a great fight for all of that, alas. Sabatini 19-5, Joe Anderson Brito 17-4-1. Sabatini 6-2 in the UFC, Brito 5-2 in the UFC. When a Brito fight gets announced, I'm fired up. That's my first thoughts. This guy is entertainment. On the feet, he's a killer. He throws every single shot with rude intention, has serious power, and throws mean combos. He's defensively very sound as well, doesn't get hit too much, and he's still very aggressive while doing that. His low kicks are similar to Jose Aldo. He TKO'd Jack Shore with them and put a dent in his fucking leg. He was on a 5-fight finish streak before losing to William Gomez by split decision. Pretty controversial. It was in France as well. And his notable wins are over Diego Lopez. He KO'd Andre Fili, sub Jonathan Pierce. Obviously, the KO over Jack Shore as well. And has a 72% takedown defense and lands 3 takedowns himself per 15. However, I think we got to stay away from the takedowns in this fight. Pat Sabatini, this guy's probably got some of the best jiu-jitsu I've ever seen. Um, Seriously, I have here he's an amazing submission artist and has good takedowns, landing 4 per 15. His last fight, he subbed Jonathan Pierce in the first round. It was with a standing rear naked choke. He got to JSP's back, and right as soon as he got that grip locked in, it was wraps. Tight squeeze, really fucking good when he gets the fight to the ground. A little fun fact with Sabatini is every single fight that he's landed one takedown in, he ends up winning that fight. His only two losses are by round one KO. They're in 90 seconds or less, by Diego Lopez and Damon Jackson, funny enough. So a little bit weird there. Sabatini's now 34 as well, getting up there in age compared to Brito's 30. Um, I see Joe Anderson Brito knocking out Sabatini in the first round. It's genuinely what I see happening. I just think that every single shot that Brito lands on Sabatini is going to hurt him. There's going to be a physical effect that is happening for Sabatini. You're going to see every single big bomb that lands have like make him struggle. And Sabatini doesn't do well with pressure like that. I think that Brito's going to walk him down. He's going to land big leg kicks and just chin him early. I don't even think we're really going to see much of a fight. Like his other KO losses, Sabatini's. I'm not taking the William Gomes loss for too much for Brito, and Gomes is a fucking good fighter as well. Styles make fights for this one. I've seen Sabatini get chinned really bad, and I've seen Joe Anderson Brito chin people really bad. Um, Overall, I think that the path to victory, obviously, for Sabatini is spam chain wrestling, um, force Brito to make a move when he's on the ground that puts him out of a position and ultimately lock up a submission. Just don't see it. I'm going to take Joe Anderson Brito to find the chin, first round knockout. And that puts us to our main event. We have Josh Emmett taking on LeRone Murphy. Um, 19-4, Josh Emmett, 10-4 in the UFC, takes on 15-0 and one draw, 7-0 and one draw in the UFC, LeRone Murphy. Um, Josh Emmett comes in here making his debut at 40 years old. He hasn't fought in a year and 3 months, I believe, since killing Bryce Mitchell, where he landed two significant strikes and literally killed him. Before then, he lost at 50-43 to Topuria, where he got 10-7 in a round, just dominated. But again, it's Ilya El Matador Topuria or Le Legane or whatever it is now. Fight before then, Josh got submitted by Yair Rodriguez with a triangle choke. I mean, it's not like this fight's really going to be a submission threat fight, right? Just a weird loss. Emmett always has a puncher's chance. Obviously, he's got a rude overhand and a rude left hook. Crazy power, but he's very readable. Similar to Drew Dober, they've kind of been solved, it seems like. But we'll always have that punch factor. I don't see much for Josh besides, I don't see like him doing much unless he lands the overhand. I simply just don't think he'll have volume. Of Murphy, and I think that Murphy will just wear him down throughout this fight. Murphy's an impressive boxer with an impressive record on a seven-fight unbeaten streak. He won his last fight by a close decision over Dan Ige, where he was dropped in the first round and had to overcome adversity early. He ultimately rallied back, landed a lot of four takedowns, I believe, in that fight. I believe actually hurt Ige a little bit too in that third round and won himself a 29-28 decision. His most impressive win, however, has got to be the fight before then, his first ever main event, 5-round fight with Edson Barbosa. The guy had four takedowns in that fight, 220 significant strikes, and I don't know where Edson Barbosa's chin spawned in from that he didn't have 7 years before then, but he had a fucking chin on him. Barbosa looked like he had a hematoma all over his face, so very impressive win from Lerone in that fight. Um, it was a good test, and it showed that Lerone also has that cardio. Um, I think that Lerone can actually find himself a finish in this fight. Josh Emmett's here to get hit. Um, Throughout this fight, Lerone's going to mix in. I think that he's going to mix in takedowns very well. Well, you're going to see a lot of control time from Lerone Murphy. We're going to see him get up and land a lot of good body shots, a lot of good boxing combos. And I just think that Emmett's not going to really do anything. He might have a big moment in the first round, but if Lerone's smart, he takes Emmett down for the first 2 rounds. Just spam takedowns, keeps that makes him have the threat of the takedown, and I think it'll be cruise control on the feet after that for Murphy. Emmett's path to victory, however, I think that Emmett needs to start shooting takedowns because if he can get Murphy to bite on takedowns as well, it ultimately sets up the hands, like I said earlier. So my official pick is going to be Murphy to win a 49-46 decision. However, I will be probably sprinkling around 3-4-5 KO on Lerone Murphy. So yeah, Lerone Murphy by decision is the official pick, and that'll do it for my UFC Vegas 105 Josh Emmett versus Lerone Murphy full card prediction. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.